There are two types of PM candidates: the ones who know the material and the ones who actually get hired. And those are not always the same person. And if you've been studying project management, reading books, taking courses, maybe even getting a certification, you need to understand why. Because the gap between knowing PM and being hireable as a project manager is actually very real. And most people don't see it until they've already applied to 20 jobs and heard nothing back. So here's a pattern that I see constantly. Someone decides they want to move into project management. They try to take it seriously and they study and they put in the work, they put in the time. They learn about project charters, stakeholder registers, risk matrices, agile ceremonies, and they learn the vocabulary, they understand the frameworks, and then they start applying and they run into the same issue over and over again. See, every job posting says the same thing: 1 or 2 years of experience required, or 5 to 10 years of experience required. So they think, okay, if I keep studying and gaining more knowledge or getting another certificate, I'll be able to convince the hiring manager that I know how to do the job, and that'll compensate for the experience. But that's not the problem. The problem is that they've been treating this as a knowledge gap, and hiring is not a knowledge test. So let's talk about what hiring managers are actually looking for, what they're actually doing when they review a PM candidate. They're not sitting there quizzing you on PMBOK definitions. They're asking a much more practical question. They're asking, can this person operate inside of a real project environment? That's it. That's the question. Can they coordinate between teams? Can they track deliverables? Can they manage a conversation with a difficult stakeholder? Can they keep the project moving when things are going sideways? Now, here's the thing about certifications. A certification tells a hiring manager that you were motivated enough to study and pass a test. Yes, that's worth something. It signals effort and commitment, but it doesn't answer the operational question. It doesn't tell them whether you can actually run a status meeting, or whether you've ever had to push back on a scope change, whether you know how to actually manage stakeholders who keep moving the goalpost. That's what experience communicates. And this is where the gap lives, not in what you know, but in what you can demonstrate that you know. Here's a distinction I want you to hold on to. Knowing project management means that you can describe the work. Being hireable means that you can show, or at least credibly signal, that you've done the work. Those are two completely different things. When you sit across from a hiring manager and they ask you about a project that you managed, they're listening for something specific. They're listening for the way you talk about it. Do you talk about it like someone who read about project management, or do you talk about it like someone who's actually done the work on the inside? That's the difference in the language. There's a difference in the language. There's a difference in the level of specificity that you're able to bring. There's a difference in what you emphasize when you actually have PM experience. Someone who reads about PM talks about frameworks. Someone who's done the work talks about decisions, talks about trade-offs, talks about problems that they ran into on the project and how they handled them. That's what signals hireability. And here's what most candidates don't realize. You don't have to have a formal PM title to actually build that experience or build that signal. You just have to have real exposure to project-like work and to know how to talk about it correctly. So what actually signals hireability to a hiring manager? I'm going to break this out into 3 things. First, how you talk about projects. See, specificity matters a lot. When you say things like, I helped coordinate a cross-functional initiative to migrate our internal tools to a new platform, or we had 7 stakeholders across 3 departments and I managed the communication plan and tracked deliverables in a shared tracker, that reads very differently than someone who says, I have experience with project coordination. You see, the level of specificity here signals that you were actually there. You were inside the work. And second, what you've actually touched, even if it's informal. A lot of people underestimate what they've actually done. If you've led any kind of initiative at work, even without the title, that counts as experience. If you've coordinated between teams, or tracked tasks, or run a meeting, or managed a deadline, that's real exposure. The mistake is not recognizing it as PM experience or not knowing how to frame it correctly. Start looking at your current work through that lens. Third, how you handle interview scenarios. See, behavioral questions for PM roles are designed to surface real experience. When they ask you, hey, tell me about a time you had a project that went off track, what did you do? If your answer sounds like a textbook example, it reads as theoretical. If your answer sounds like a real situation that you actually navigated with real constraints, real people, real decisions, that's what will convince hiring managers that you know how to do the job. So let me give you a quick scenario to illustrate this a little bit better. Imagine there are 2 candidates who interview for the same PM role. Candidate A has a PMP certification. They've completed 3 PM courses online. They can walk you through every phase of the project lifecycle, and they know the difference between a work breakdown structure and a project schedule. They have the vocabulary down by heart, and they can give you any definition just like that. Now, candidate B doesn't have a certification. They've been working as an operations coordinator for 2 years, and during that time, they coordinated a system rollout across 4 different departments. They managed the communication between IT and the business team. They ran the weekly check-ins. They tracked the issue list. They escalated the right things at the right time. And in the interview, candidate B can't name the methodology they used, but when they talk about the project, they talk about it like an operator. They talk about specific problems. They talk about real decisions that they had to make, and they talk about what they would do differently next time. See, who do you think is going to get that offer? Candidate A or candidate B? Usually candidate B, because the hiring manager isn't hiring someone to teach PM theory to the team. They're hiring someone who can operate inside of an existing team environment. So if you're building towards a PM career right now, here's how to think about it differently. Stop treating PM prep as a knowledge accumulation problem. You probably already know enough. The issue is not the knowledge gap, it's actually the experience gap. So start building evidence of real project involvement. Look at your current role. Are there initiatives you can take ownership of? Are there processes that you can coordinate? Are there cross-functional opportunities that you can lead? Even small projects count. The goal is to get your hands on real work, so you have real things to talk about in interviews, and start reframing how you describe your current work. Most people undersell their existing experience because they don't frame it in PM terms. Start thinking about your work in terms of scope, stakeholders, timelines, deliverables, and risk. Not because you're trying to trick anyone, but because that's actually what project management is. And if you're doing any of that work, you should be describing it that way. The goal is to close the gap between what you know and what you can demonstrate. Knowledge lives in your head. Hireability shows up in your past experience, in your language, in your stories. So here's a real question to sit with after this video. Not, hey, do I know enough about project management to get the job? But can I show that I'm ready to operate as a project manager in a project environment? That's the question hiring managers are asking. And the candidates who understand that first, the ones who can answer it clearly, specifically, and credibly, those are the candidates who get hired. Not always the most certified, not always the one who studied the most, the one who can demonstrate real project experience, that they've done the work, they've been in the work. And so if you're watching and this is you and you feel the gap, then that's useful information for yourself. It means you now know what to do, what to build next, what to focus on. And hopefully by doing that, you can close the experience gap, gain real experience, and be able to talk about yourself in a way in interviews that can convince the hiring manager that you know how to do the job, or that you've actually done the job. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. And also, I would be remiss if I do not invite you to join our live PMO, where you can actually gain hands-on real project management experience and actually see what it's like to be a project manager and gain that confidence that will help you succeed in your next interview. So click the link below, join us in our live PMO, and I'll see you on the next one.